You're listening to The Present Professional.
Get quiet to live loud.
Aligned action or a distraction. Those are the two options.
It's the best thing you can do for humanity.
A podcast for leaders navigating the human experience. Brought to you by Humessence. And I'm your host, John Marshall. Welcome back to The Present Professional. Today, I'm joined by Logan Yonavjak, co-founder and CEO of the Readiness Engine, a leadership intelligence company that's focused on measuring the hidden drivers of execution risk inside growing organizations. Her work sits at a fascinating intersection of capital, leadership, adult development, and long-term value creation. She has helped move hundreds of millions across climate and natural capital strategies, and now she's applying that same decision quality to one of the hardest questions inside organizations. How do we know who is actually ready for complexity? Rather than relying on charisma, visibility, tenure, or past performance, Logan's work explores how language, developmental capacity, and behavioral signals can help organizations make better decisions around promotion, succession, hiring, and leadership development. Logan, welcome to The Present Professional.
So great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, I'd love to allow the audience to learn a little bit more about you. So I'm curious, what was the through line from your work in capital allocation and investment into leadership readiness? How did this evolve?
I think if I look in hindsight, it's a lot clearer, obviously, like many of our paths. What I came across observationally was just that a lot of teams and leaders were not necessarily optimized for the tasks at hand. I didn't have the language at the time, but they didn't seem ready for the level of complexity or the multitude of tasks or relationship management or team management that they were assigned to. And often people were promoted because of their past skills or experience rather than their management abilities. Just these different observations from teams I'd worked on, both functional and dysfunctional. And for me, being someone who really cares a lot about positive impact through investing, I think my bias became like, why don't we have the most highly equipped leaders at the helm? Like, how are we picking these people? Are we making the best decisions? It seems like a lot of leadership decisions are based on, again, past performance, credentials, warm intros, your resume, not necessarily readiness or your level of capacity as a person. And so I think it's a bit antiquated how we make hiring and leadership development decisions. And so this was, again, I was coming from mostly the investing world. I've worked in university endowments. I've worked at private equity firms, and I've also worked at smaller investment shops and helped develop investment vehicles and worked with startups. So I've kind of seen just a variety of different types of leadership and at smaller and larger companies. And probably the largest company I've worked at is Morgan Stanley. So just, I think it was informal and then it became a formal interest.
Started off as this curiosity and the patterns that you were seeing in not just the teams that you were a part of, but also the companies that you were investing in, right? And that your
Then I
firms were
also made
investing
some
in.
investments as an angel investor. And I would say that there's one in particular where I kind of grossly misjudged the leadership from the perspective of I was very persuaded by the charisma of one of the founders. And then once the check was deployed and they had my money, it really became a different conversation. Really flaky behavior, And a lot of problems ensued. And I wish I'd had something more rigorous that I had deployed around like understanding the people who are at the helm. So that was a personal story that also kind of drove this interest. Again, that didn't all come at once, but it definitely helped inform. So.
Mm-hmm. Developed out of necessity.
Which is, a lot of necessity is the mother of invention, as they say.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. It's funny. We were just talking about that with the digital nomad family invention that exists.
Right. Yes. Yeah, we were.
Right. That need. I searched for it and it's out there. But in regards to this need, right, the need to understand capacity, understand readiness, right, before we make hiring, promotion decisions. So I love the name too, Readiness Engine, right? Like, and even just understanding readiness. But when you say readiness, like, what are you actually measuring there?
Well, I'd like to start actually by speaking about toddlers because I have a 2-year-old and I think a lot about her capacity with this framework in mind now. Obviously, what we're studying is adult developmental capacity, but I think there's a good analogy because we've all spent time with small children and sometimes she will understand what I'm saying if I ask her a question. And sometimes she just is blank because she doesn't understand my question. And she'll actually respond to something that she thinks I said. And my point in saying this is that when someone's at a certain developmental capacity, they don't necessarily even understand the next level up, or people at the next level up have a hard time remembering what it was like to be at the kind of a subsequent level down, because these patterns of development can actually occur over multiple decades, especially if there's not coaching intervention. Like think about who you were. We can bring it back to being an adult. Think about who you were 10 years ago. You had a different developmental capacity, and we could probably have mapped it if we'd looked longitudinally. And so these are very much patterns that have been developed in the research of adult developmental psychology. And there are markers of understanding where someone comes in terms of their ability to hold complexity, for instance. And what does that actually mean? It means that you're able to juggle many, many, many more balls than you did when you were at a lower level of development. And you're doing that objectively. So when you're at a lower stage of development, you tend to be more I-centric. Your world revolves around you and what you're experiencing. And as you grow in your developmental capacity, you're able to see different perspectives and kind of build on those perspectives up until a point where it's actually quite exponential. So people who are at higher stages of development are actually modeling and measuring like thousands of data points objectively. And we think of it as the egocentric to the world centric to the like cosmic centric almost. And so some of the spiritual, leaders of our society are probably at those much higher levels of development, which most people don't reach in their lifetimes.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me of, is there any spiral dynamics work woven into
Yes.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was going to say, as you were kind of talking through those different levels of consciousness, I was kind of visualizing the pathway up the spiral.
Yes, and in
Okay.
fact, you as you go up, you're also metabolizing from the lower levels. So you're kind of taking what you need and continuing to grow. So it's not like you're just completely shedding what you've learned before. It's very much building on an additive, but there are certain skills that you kind of let go as you move up the ladder. So it's, and I just want to also frame this is not bad or good. There's no sort of assignment of good people are at this level or people who are incapable are at these levels. It's more just where are you realistically sitting and perspective taking from, and then what kind of roles are those perspectives best suited for? And we haven't really done much in the way of parsing that out in corporate or other settings. So I think we are missing that layer of understanding in how we assess and develop leaders.
Agreed. So I kind of got one element or one measurable out of that, and it's the ability to hold complexity, right? How many perspectives are you evaluating, like as you take in information, as you develop strategy, as you make decisions? So it's this less, and it's the funny how you say, I centric to more like, or other centric, cosmic centric, other centered mentality. And I can even notice it in some of my clients as well, just in the language that they use, right? And
well, I think a lot of the value,
I, like you said,
yeah,
I language,
yes,
right?
And I think
like
a lot
when
of the
you
value
said that, it came,
we're adding,
it hit me.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I keep interrupting you.
No,
I
you're
was going to
good.
say though, I think one of the values we're bringing is just creating a platform of shared vocabulary for some of these concepts that many of us are already tuning into, like you're saying with your clients. It maybe just has not been at the forefront of how you think about their developmental stage, but once you see it, you see it. It's kind of one of those things that now I see this through. I see almost everyone through the lens of adult developmental stages. So.
Yeah. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And there's another word that you said I think is really important, is like able to see it objectively, because I remember even just from some of the research, some of the Keegan research in it was one of my coach training schools I was in, when we were going through I think it was maybe his immunity to change work. And we were going through the different stages of what you're subject to, right? So it's like you evolve from just like being subject to like the opinions or activities of your parents, and then you're subject to your teachers, world, friends, etc. And then your world expands, but you become subject to more. And then there's like the switch to objectivity, right? You get to a level of maturity where you're no longer subject to like the opinions of your parents, if you will. It's more of an objective, like,
You see it as one
relationship.
piece of the equation.
Right. Exactly. And then, you become subject to less, so that your nervous system is less subject to the will of outside forces, so that you can inherently hold all of these objective pieces of data to make an assumption there, to make not assumption, to make a decision or develop a strategy from an objective place. So I think there's something there, but I'm curious, how do you evaluate like what people are subject to through an assessment like this?
Well, we're asking open-ended and scenario-based questions, and we ask about 14 of them for this assessment that's focused on founders and startups. We ask, we have someone sit in front of a one-way video assessment, and then they're answering these questions. And then for strategic complexity, which is the concept we've just been talking about, we are looking at how many perspectives they name in referring to experiences they've had or perspectives that they're holding. So we're able to trace using basically sentence analysis and paragraph analysis, how many perspectives they're holding objectively. And so that gives us a proxy for the stages of development there. That's just how we look at it from, there's other constructs that we're measuring, but we're talking about the strategic complexity one.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other contexts or constructs that you're measuring? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so we're looking, you were alluding to this, so I'll go into this one next: coachability and identity flexibility. So we want to better understand how wedded someone is to their current identity, because, in sort of everyday speak, we think about it as fixed and growth mindset. This was something that got brought up a lot in business school when I was there. And we all would like to think of ourselves as growth minded. But in reality, a lot of people are very wedded to their perspective and their current identity. And that makes it very challenging to do innovation work. It makes it challenging when you take any sort of outside criticism and you take it personally. That becomes a real barrier to affecting change. So again, not that those individuals can't play some sort of functional role in an organization, but you probably don't want to put them at the helm when there's a lot of innovative decisions that need to be made, and they're going to be receiving a lot of critique from the outside world on how they're doing things, et cetera. So you just really want someone with that growth mindset whose nervous system isn't going to feel attacked, who's practiced that experience of staying objective and being open to that flexible kind of, and it helps you grow with a company too, or an entrepreneur grow internally with a department. It's like, you don't want to stay the same person that you were when you started something. And so again, that's a mentality that we can, actually, we have a micro score on that one in particular, because people ask me all the time, what's the most important construct in terms of if you had to stack them? And I think coachability and identity flexibility, because if you don't have a growth mindset, it's really hard to work on the other ones, which you can work on, but it's just, it makes it really challenging. So.
And do you find that that's kind of just an individual's disposition, nature, nurture, or is that something that's you found people to actually experience a larger step change in?
I would love to bring on, have a podcast with an evolutionary biologist and then maybe a sociologist and someone else to help me explain this phenomenon, because I do feel like there's a significant portion of the population that tend to be more fixed mindset. And there is, evolutionary rationale for kind of staying in tradition and maybe being fearful about things changing. And, maybe there's reasons why this kind of this fixed kind of calcified way of doing things sticks around with most people. And maybe the innovators are kind of the ones that, go out and pioneer things. And you kind of need to keep things stable for the population to continue to thrive. I don't know. I would really love for someone to tease this out for me. I'm sure there's people who have theorized on it. It does seem to be both a biological and cultural. I know certain cultures are more fixed mindset, more community focused, so less individuated in their kind of way of conceptualizing. So they don't want to go out on a limb because they see themselves as more part of the group. So I think there's biological, cultural, and then individual reasons for it. But I think it was one of the most fascinating questions. And that's why I don't judge it per se. I think it's sort of let's just measure it. And then if it's not present, you can still work with the person, but maybe just, again, they're not the best fit for this innovative role. And that's okay. Why can't we just accept that?
I agree. Sometimes, but sometimes that, whether it be a hard truth or not, can be something that sets you free. Right.
Yeah.
And that was a really great answer to that question. Because
I don't have all the answers. It doesn't make sense in some ways. I really doesn't.
Because I see the same thing where it's just, an individual's disposition towards, and there's so much that can go into where you lie on the spectrum.
Could have been,
exactly.
And that's why we don't want to belittle or judge it. But in coaching, you can probably tease more of it out and try to understand it.
Coaching and therapy. Right?
Therapy.
I think there are, like you said, I think there are some traumas that keep people fixed in their identity. I think there are cultural, I think there are even generational traumas that keep you fixed in your identity, and there are language barriers that
That's true. Yes, great
right,
point on that.
like what you were saying about the culture, like some languages like don't have words to express some individualistic concepts or contexts that others can, right? So there's been I've read some things about how like the way certain cultures like even have the words for something changes the mindsets that are available. So I mean, there's so much work or there's so much just background and, like you said, different schools of thought that could go into, like, is someone fixed in their level of fixed versus growth mindset, or
Yeah. Uh-huh.
or like, what are the levers that you pull to help shift people towards more growth? Like, that's been a question I've been really, really interested in, right? And I think there's part of the healing trauma part of it. And then you bring in the evolutionary perspective. And I started thinking, why would it be survival oriented to be in a fixed mindset? The only thing that came up for me was by the perception of others. Like, we don't want to be someone new tomorrow that is unrecognized by your tribe. And they might wonder, like, who the heck has this person become? Like, should we trust them? Like, who are they?
There's sort of a, because we're such social creatures, there's a pressure to stay, especially in small group units, like pretty similar to the group, or just make sure everyone's comfortable in a way.
Yeah, just consistency, yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm basing this off of no data or evolutionary biology background.
That's why I'm sort of like, I think I'm gonna voluntold you to have a series on fixed mindset and bring in different perspectives on it, because I think it would be a really interesting conversation. Anyway.
Definitely. Now, okay, so we went down a little bit of a mindset rabbit hole. What are the other constructs you're measuring?
So we look at relational intelligence, and a lot of what we're looking for there is how someone talks about empathizing, putting themselves in other people's shoes. We actually look at network, of how they build networks and how they interact with networks as well. That one we're still kind of building out, I would say. But yeah, and in all of these, something else I wanted to bring up is something my co-founder exposed me to in as a concept is negative space analysis, and really asking that question in every context you're in. So one of the things I find valuable in what we're doing is we're evaluating what people are saying, but also what they're not saying. And so if someone is kind of completely devoid of discussing any sort of relational experiences, or pointing towards conflicts or good experiences they've had with people, that's also something to pay attention to in kind of a lack of orientation towards relational exchanges. And again, doesn't mean that the person doesn't have a place, or can't be introduced or taught some of these skills, but it does kind of beg the question, should they be in a business development role, or maybe they shouldn't lead a sales team, So those are all just flags for consideration, sort of like risk factors or observations that you can make. So yeah, that's relational intelligence. We look at the ability to pivot quickly. So we ask about past experiences where you've had to make quick decisions, how those decisions are made, like what resources you drew on. What we're looking for is someone's ability to hold their goal in mind and pivot strategically. So you don't want someone who's hair on fire all the time. You want them to be strategic about their movements, but there's an ability that some people have to make kind of quick, thoughtful decisions, whereas other people stall or are kind of like petrified, or that's petrified is not the right word. They are kind of like deer in the headlights when they actually has to come to making a decision. So again, probably shouldn't be an EMT or, something that requires really fast decision making, quick switching, quick leadership switch, decision making, maybe a slower kind of paced thinking role. And we've got two more, and one of them is resilience. So how well does someone survive stress? And so what does it look like for them to recover from stress? How does it affect them? How have they built systems around themselves to preempt stress? So a lot of people are reacting, and what the extreme of that is burnout. But are there ways in which this person either has learned from burnout and decided to build systems around them to prevent it, or they've never burned out because they've developed systems to prevent it? And what do those systems look like? It can be everything from qigong practice. It can be calling a close friend that you really can rely on. It can be a reflective exercise, breathing, just like a combination of factors that work for you to stay, robust from the outside stress factors. Managing your nervous system is how I would put that. And so those, I don't know, I kind of want to stop there because there's so much.
Well, as you're sharing, I'm thinking about all of the training applications that we have at Humescence, and it's like because I'm, and that's why I asked the question about developing a growth mindset, is because that's really where we live, is developing the areas of this assessment that are coming up, right? Our team resilience training, also something we work on with clients, actually providing some of those structures that can be supportive for helping you bounce back from stress, right? Helping people understand what are their practices, what are the things they need to be connected to become more resilient. So, whereas I love that you're measuring these things, because it deepens my interest in how do we develop people in these areas, let them understand that their priorities to developing their readiness, right, for the next level, if that's something that they're interested in, right? Not everyone needs to want to be the CEO, right? As a matter of fact, that would make for a challenging company.
Well, I do think a lot more people think they want to be CEOs than actually, in reality, want to be. But anyway, yeah, I think one of the things I love to talk about is that we are developing baselines for people. So we're actually developing a whole coaching training, and it's not to develop coaches per se. It's to give them this tool so they can have a developmental assessment layer that they can then build on with their clients and be very confident that they're actually going up the mountain, that there's clear steps for that individual to take along these different pathways. And that's really, I think, at least from what I've experienced in the coaching industry, that is not really present, is this developmental baseline component. And so while there can be amazing coaches that get you there, why not have a bit more structure and third party kind of observational data, instead of just relying on the coach to orient or the person to self-report? I think self-reporting can be a very biased experience for a lot of people. So not that people
Certainly
might not understand, they might understand different aspects of self, but we all have blind spots, and it's a lot easier to see patterns when someone else's observation or AI combined with a human scoring, which is what we do.
Well, so before I ask this question, I know that I think there was one more area you had left, one more construct that you measure. What's that last one? And then I'll ask the question on my mind.
Okay, so we talked about strategic complexity, purposeful agility, resilience, coachability, relational
Relationship. Hmm.
intelligence, and then we call team climate IQ. And what that means is your ability to create, in a nutshell, psychological safety for others to be there, to work at their best, to perform at their highest ability. And so when we all know this, when we're around a toxic individual at work, it makes it, what you think about is that person, or your nervous system is then attuning to that individual's state of being. And even if you have a strong sense of self it's still it's like a tax on your work. You aren't able
Hmm.
to really focus at your best because you're always worried about this, whether it's neurotic or micromanaging or someone yelling at you. Like there's all these different aspects that kind of put a damper on what you're capable of. And so someone who's really high on this construct is really able to create a sense of safety amongst a team. And that sense of safety is sort of like the context in which you can build trust and respect and actually learn about each other's communication styles and brainstorm and do the things that creatively we require to solve problems and to execute. So it's a real barrier to execution. Going back to your intro of me, if you want to talk about business outcomes, to me, that's one of the biggest obvious areas. I've worked on so many teams where there was one sort of culprit leader who everyone was just, when they came around, they just were frustrated. They didn't want to follow through because of this individual. So yeah, I think this is a really important area that's often overlooked in terms of how do we measure that.
Agreed. Because that's always measured from the outside in, right? A
And
culture pulse
360s can be
survey or an
helpful.
engagement
Yeah.
survey, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what, I think is really, really fascinating when it comes to the quantitative linguistics, or however you're, doing this with AI involved, to not just listen to like what categories their answers fall into, but more how they're responding. Like the language they're utilizing to respond says something about who they are and how they approach this area, as opposed to the response itself. Like, am I following the um at the highest kind of generalization of how this works? Am I following?
Well, my dad would always say tone matters. It's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it, which is, I think, a lot of it. It's amazing how you can have a message to communicate, and then it's like how that message is delivered and received by someone else, someone else's nervous system, really. And so it can be neutral, it can be positive, it can be negative. And so, yeah, what we're measuring, and again, we're getting better at this. I think and this is where, um, 360s are a great complement to what we do. I definitely don't want to denigrate other approaches that have been taken. I think if you combined our team climate IQ, which is the leader talking about their experience of building a team, that's still self-reported from the team's perspective. So then you bring in the 360 and you combine that and you get a better picture, holistic picture of how the person's able to hold that psychological safety piece.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay. So there's an in to out and outward in perspective that can be supportive to, like, not just the score, but the development opportunities there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You want other people's perspectives if they're on a team with them. I think we'd be remiss in leaving that out. But with transcript analysis, which is what we've been able to do, we can do also team analysis, which kind of also points to some of those patterns. So we can take a team in a meeting and actually digest some of the ways those people are coming at their relationship from their different perspectives. And if we know their stages of development, that can also help inform the perspective they're taking on the team and whether the team's progressing as a team over time. So there's just a lot of really cool stuff we can do.
If you could give me one moment, I want to introduce you to today's sponsor, my company, Humescence. By listening to this show and putting these ideas into practice, you're already someone who cares deeply about culture, leadership, and how people work together. And at Humescence, we provide growth stage organizations with training and coaching to build the systems and leadership practices that build these ideas into their culture as they scale. To learn more about this, visit humescence.com and schedule a free consultation with me or any member of my team. So thank you so much for listening. Now, back to the show. I feel like there's this, it's like the amount of data that you have access to directly, is directly proportional to the, like, usefulness, I guess, or accuracy of the results that the Readiness Engine outputs.
Well, I mean, the way I've tried to think about it is, more transcript data is good to a point. I mean, at some point you see the pattern. So it's like we need as much data as we need to see the pattern. And then once you see the pattern, you don't necessarily need more. It's always good to like back it up with more and more evidence. But we tend to pull in like several areas of evidence for each construct in enough to be significant. And AI or human scoring depends on the engagement level that we're working with. But with the AI, it'll kind of tell us if it has enough information. So at some points we've been given, 4 or 5 transcripts of a podcast or something like that, and it'll only be able to run 4 just because it doesn't have enough data to make those claims. So yeah, it's hard to answer that question like, oh, we need 5 transcripts or it's sort of like we need enough to see the pattern. But it's not necessarily hundreds of transcripts. It's somewhere in the order of like 5 to 20 per person.
Okay. So this is important, right? Understanding who's ready for the next level, the things that companies should be measuring, right, to produce the best results, right? The best business results. Now, I agree with all of the areas that you're measuring, and I've been sitting here trying to think of something else that should be included, and I'm drawing a blank right now. So I feel
We
like
stumped
it's
you.
right. It's very comprehensive, and very comprehensive. And now, so I guess from the actual application. So say, okay, I'm in, like, we need to understand who's ready for the next level in our succession planning in my, I don't know, 500 person organization. I'm sitting here, I'm an HR leader listening right now who's over our kind of succession planning, talent development process. How do I get started with this? How do I understand how it works, and what's the process for, I guess, what are the different entry points for the leaders that would be a part of this, or potential leaders that would be a part of my succession plan? Is it like they all have to subscribe to having their meetings transcribed? Is it they all just take a 14-question survey? Is it like what kind of parameters do I need to have set before I can get some like real data to start making succession planning decisions?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. There's 2 routes in terms of acquiring the data. One is transcript data, and that just depends on the company. I mean, some companies have people recording information. Some companies have more sensitive types of information that might not be as readily accessible or highly classified information. So we would have them take an assessment, because with the assessment, we're getting everything we need to run the analysis. So we would have people sit down and take that, and then we could run also team analyses off of either the assessment or the transcript data. So it just sort of depends on, if it's a succession planning exercise, it's like, I think it's important for those making the decision to identify what they're looking for in the leader, because we very much are augmenting, human wisdom as well. Like, we don't want to just come in and say this and this and this, and you should choose this person. It's very much like, if there's something in specifically you're looking for, we can also maybe help you tease that out in the data. Or if you just want to better understand the 6 areas that we identified, which are pretty comprehensive, as you just alluded to, then, we're probably going to cover you with this information that we're giving you. So we like to deliver. We're building even more interactive capabilities so that we'd like to get into simulations and just different ways. Like, I have this vision of all of us having a second brain on AI, but that's at our highest level of development. So what if we could train ourselves to be our highest version of ourselves at different in these different constructs, and then if we have a problem arise or a conflict, we could have that second brain inform how we think about the problem from a higher level of complexity or relational intelligence. So there's just a lot we can do with like simulations and role playing, making this data like very interactive. But right now it's we deliver a dashboard and a report, and then we also have we have coaching capabilities. We're building an affiliate group of coaching professionals that will team up with us.
So it sounds like there's a lot possible, but I want to keep it simple for people that are, that might be thinking about, implementing something like this. It sounds like, once the system has been integrated and, you're on year 2, 3, 4 of your succession planning and leadership development process using the Readiness Engine, right? You have all these other like capabilities that could be in mind, but for someone like just starting out, again, there's an option for their people to take the assessment, and then and that's like the baseline, right? And then or they could do the baseline of transcripts, but
yes,
I just don't know if that's going to be someone. So I'm just going to do it how I think that it would roll out, starting with the assessments. Then they can choose like kind of data quality enhancement add-ons, and that be adding transcript data, that be merging team assessments and or team transcript data. And then the next option is adding 360 data to those assessments.
Yeah, I mean,
well.
It depends if they're already doing 360. We could probably just add that into the initial reports, honestly.
Great. So you can take what they've already been doing as well and integrate that into the assessment. Okay, into the engine.
Yes.
Okay, great. So now I've integrated what we have into the engine. We're starting to get our first results, right? Then comes the question of, okay, when it comes to bias, right? There's this whole movement, right, of just like reducing bias when it comes to promotion and hiring decisions, but ultimately this is an organization run by humans that have opinions and choices that ultimately someone chooses, right, who to promote. So we're never going to completely remove bias.
No,
that's just not realistic. But I think for those of us that, understand that we need to make a hiring decision, we need to make a promotion decision, we need to make an investment decision, right, in, X amount of companies vying for this capital. How are we evaluating, right, this team's level of readiness to step up to this next level of investment, this next level of leadership. And you're saying that the Readiness Engine focuses exactly on answering that question. Like, based off of this research and aggregating all of that with today's technology, you're able to determine, based on these, it was six factors, who is ready.
I think it's I think that's a good way to think about it in terms of, I like to say it's augmenting human decision making. And at the very least, even if you're going to make the same hiring or promotion decision, you're forced to evaluate your own biases. Or I think we should create more context in which people need to voice why they made a decision about a hire or promotion to their peers, even if the evidence points in a different direction. I think it just it's like bringing in a straw man or bringing in something to push up against, so that we're not just kind of holding these biases more unconsciously. We're forced to make them more conscious, potentially.
Yes. I love you said it. That really hit with me. Augmenting human decision making. Because that's really what it is. Like, we're not developing an unbiased succession pipeline process. We are giving people the data to make more objectively contextual decisions. Beautiful.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot because I've been the positive recipient many times of informal decision making, right? Like, I was in the right room. I went to a Ivy League grad school. I've had different contexts in which I was probably offered positions. There's probably maybe arguably someone who was better suited. On the flip side, I've applied for things cold, and they already had someone in mind internally. And I'm not saying that these things are necessarily bad, but I think that people are often making really quick decisions or not really being very systematic about why they chose a person or not. Like, in some cases, I was a good fit. In other cases, maybe someone else would have been. And it would have been nice to have more of that third-party framework to better understand how I was being evaluated, how others were being evaluated. And even if I got chosen or not, I think it gives me comfort, at least personally, to better understand, okay, these are areas in which someone else is being picked over me. So there was that too. I've just thought about my own career journey and how unfair or fair it was at different points as well. And I think I have empathy for situations where people are really coming into scenarios and they may not have come in with a warm lead, or they didn't go to the right school, quote unquote. Or there's other biases going on that prevent them from getting a role. And so I think there's been this whole movement of DEI. I think it's called DEI-J now. I feel like the acronym has evolved past me. But I think what we're also really talking about is other types of diversity, in which things like, how do you hold complexity? How do you relate to others? Again, back to some of these factors that are really worth considering in decision making and in deciding on leadership decision making and team development. So, yeah, I've become really passionate about this subject. I think the DEI conversation is a good starting point, but there's a lot more to say about it, and a lot more types of perspective and diversity that we need to consider in the mix as well.
I agree, because there could be someone that maybe at face value or based on the kind of relational context in which they've, developed their reputation in an organization, or just their disposition, right? Just maybe less visible, right?
Less visible. Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, like, instead of the, the squeaky wheel getting the grease, if you will, like, maybe these organizations are overlooking potential in areas that aren't just
100%.
omnipresent or overly present, right? When it comes to, being visible or intentionally, right, networking around the organization or advocating for themselves in a way that's natural. I mean, that doesn't mean they shouldn't be advocating for themselves, but that could also mean that that's potential overlooked that you want to be able to unearth.
Yeah. No, and that's just one of a multitude of reasons I think to have a third party assessment or analytics again to augment human decision making.
Well, I have to go here. So augment human decision making is the start. But do you see a future where AI is just making all the hiring decision making, succession planning decision making, where you just remove the human from the hiring decision entirely?
Well, I mean, AI, it's a good question. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I think that humans will want to be involved with leadership decision making for a long time. I actually have seen this. I'll take the VC space, which is being heavily disrupted right now. So a lot of VCs are relying on AI to make investment decisions. And they're doing a better job in some cases than humans. So I don't know. Maybe we're close to your reality, but I do think that we'll have a hybrid for a long time. Usually the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? Like it's not going to stay the way it was, but it's not all going to be taken over by AI. So I could see a scenario where people's second brains are making decisions potentially. Like you kind of have versions of yourself making different decisions. But I still think the AI needs to be trained again with your developmental capacity in mind. Like most AIs don't have this context that we're talking about, developmental capacity, in the way that they were built or trained or the way that people are interacting with them. So I think that this adds to the decision-making opportunity set, whether it becomes a hybrid or whether AI takes over. It should be based somewhat on this body of work. So is that a fluffy, squishy enough answer for you? I didn't really answer the question.
Safe, for sure.
It was safe. Yeah.
It was for sure safe.
I don't think I'm ready for AI to take over all of my. Listen, my husband started an AI grocery agent that was supposed to revolutionize the way we do grocery shopping and plan all of our meals. The last delivery it gave us was a 1 pound bag of apples, a huge bag of rice, just stuff we literally couldn't use. And it didn't even tell us why it used, and it signed off of our group chat. And I just thought to myself, my husband spent a lot of time programming this thing and like giving it specifications, and it still just could not. Grocery variability is such a huge, like if you think about the way we purchase food, it's actually in different quantities. It depends on the vendor. There's not a lot of standardization. And so if you just take that alone, like I still don't want AI taking over my grocery decision making. Like it really screwed up the last order.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'll scale that to a multinational organization that's choosing their next level of senior leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to get the wrong order.
You don't want to get that pound of apples that you're not going to eat. We have to make an apple pie now, which is fine, but
that's hilarious. But well, the AI has made this technology, has made this assessment, into something that is like dynamic and can live and take in like so many different data points to support augmented decision making that, if you truly had the AI built on these frameworks and you were going to work for a company that was built by the Readiness Engine and use the Readiness Engine to make all of their hiring decisions and, up to the most senior levels of leadership. And solely, like no human influence, but just based on the Readiness Engine, taking in all of their transcripts and the responses and everything, completely built the hierarchy, right? Would you be excited to go work for that company?
That's a great question. I think I would. So I know that goes back to your question of like, is AI going to take over human
A
decision
different way
making?
of asking. Mhm.
But I think I would be, yes, I'd be really interested to see what it came up with, but it would also be good to have, I don't know, it reminds me of self-driving cars right now. Like there are different stages of self-driving, but at the very, I think it's stage 5, it's fully self-driving. There's, you just sit in the back and do whatever. Read a book. I like the version where you kind of have to sit at the wheel, and if something goes wrong, you have control over it. It would be nice to have some sort of assurance that there's checks and balances, even if there's multiple AI agents that are trained to be checks and balances for one another. So it would just be good to dig in a little bit more there, but and maybe you could start with a type of company that was a little more standardized, or like there was a way to kind of test the counterfactual of what had happened versus like what AI could do. But in theory, yeah, I would be excited to go work for that company. Why not?
I agree.
I mean, if you look at the stats of corporate America, I'm going to get some of these. I don't want to be like, pinpointed in the citations, but generally in the range of, I've heard as low as 20% engagement of employees of feeling engaged in their roles. High turnover, that we're experiencing. 40 to 50% of promotional decisions don't work out within the first 18 months. 70% of M&A deals don't go through because of, or fail because of, cultural clashes. I mean, it's not that we can't do worse than that, but it's not going great.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's a way to think about it. Like, it would be interesting to have AI give it a shot.
Right, little subset of data.
So I would definitely experiment with it. I would be willing to go into the experiment because I don't see that we're doing that great in aggregate. There's certainly like the great places to work and some of those metrics, but I just, by and large, people don't seem that excited or engaged in their work. And there's a lot of disgruntled and dysfunctional teams, dysfunctional leaders. So yeah, I think why not give AI at least a shot at like experimenting with it?
I agree. Why not? Yeah, it's as long as it's trained on, right? Trained on the things that we actually want, like trained on the things that are, supportive of, collective capacity and just life
And I'm allowed to
experience,
quit if I
guess,
want,
too.
right? Like I can quit the job as long as I can quit
Yeah.
if I want to.
No, you had to stay like at least
I
2
have
years.
a contract for 10 years. Oh, wow.
I'd be in for that experiment. I think it would be.
It's a
I
cool
think it
way
would be
to
fun.
ask the question differently, though, too. I really like that. It's a good way to think about it.
Well, being that you're the co-founder of Readiness Engine, I would hope you'd want to go work for that company. It gives me more faith. It gives me more faith in the engine, but I also have a lot of faith in the concepts that it's built on. I mean, we've already touched on adult development and spiral dynamics, and I'm sure there's a lot of other work that goes into it. I'd be really interested in the relationship piece and attachment styles and attachment
Yeah,
theory.
different people. I have to ask my co-founder about that. We haven't had that conversation. It's a good point.
Yeah, it's just because after going deep into attachment theory and having kids and witnessing the development of other kids all around us, and and parenting styles and all of that, it's just so fascinating how it influences the way that you participate in relationships for the rest of your life.
Wow. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. So true.
Unbelievable. That's why. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about the measurement piece, and I think we could do a whole other episode on its use in development, right? Because like that's the interesting part is, how do we prevent the assessment just from becoming like a label of your readiness and make sure that it's, also used as a development tool, right? That we're not, by assigning this number, fixing people to some level of readiness, but able to provide the coaching and training necessary, right, to develop the people that want to be more
Right.
ready for the next level. Right?
Yeah, I think that would be a good conversation with my co-founder.
Beautiful. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for
maybe
inviting us back.
I was going to say, yeah, but we can bring her on too. That would be great. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So for the VP of people or the kind of culture champion leader that's listening right now, right? They know their organization's growing faster than their leadership systems, or they just don't have a system in general, right? What's the first question they should be asking themselves about readiness?
Yeah, I mean, well, how is the current approach working for them? I mean, if you have something, does it feel like it's meeting your needs? Are people able to meet their quarterly goals? Is there any execution risk coming up? Are teams? I mean, I think a way to think about it is looking at what can happen when these constructs are not addressed. So if there's low relational intelligence, or people not getting along well, is there a lot of team friction? Is the leadership sort of having trouble making decisions or feeling overwhelmed by, the level of complexity that's coming in? Like, these are kind of indicators that something like our tool would be really helpful to weave in. And we think about it as developmental intelligence. So most people are probably not aware of some of the limitations of the way they're thinking about leadership development in this context. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe I would answer it as, are you seeing some of these friction points come up?
Well said. There's this just such a beautiful gap that you're trying to address here, like this gap between like talent and readiness, right? And the usual ways that we see folks getting promoted based on, right, delivering results and visibility or certain talent markers that you've identified versus like what's actually been shown in the data to produce better results, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're doing a really great job with the technologies available today to help bridge that gap. I think it's a really, really important body of work that every company should be thinking about.
Thank you so much. I agree. Yeah.
These decisions, I mean, they shape the experience of everyone in your organization, because in that same data you're referencing for, current state of employment, it's like the vast majority of people that leave their jobs, right, leave because of their manager.
Yeah.
Right. Leave because
and how many
of,
managers
exactly.
are coached, and how many are taught to lead people just on that dimension
Many.
alone? Yeah.
Not many. It typically starts at a very senior level, right? Let's invest in executive coaching for our executive team, not our middle managers or frontline managers. And I think this technology and, the incorporation of AI, having that second brain, is going to make coaching available to more people that, from an investment perspective, that, wasn't available in the past. So I'm really excited for that when it comes to this technology. Do I think it's replacing executive coaches or coaches in general? No, because the relationship dynamic like adds a whole different level of resonance that you can't really get.
Resonance is a good,
right, with this technology. But like without the resonance, would it be helpful? Hell yeah.
better than the alternative, which is either
Nothing.
people
Read a book. Yeah.
reading a book or
Go to a
people asking
seminar.
questions of AI, not recognizing their own blind spots, or maybe they know how to ask questions of AI. Some people are really savvy, but I don't know that many people even know how to be coached necessarily, like just by like talking to AI and dialoguing with it. So, yeah, I think AI coaching serves a purpose, and it's not the be all end all, but it's going to add to the system, and I'm excited about its the accessibility factor.
Agreed. Well, so what does the process look like for this VP of people or HR business partner or something that's listening right now that wants to get involved with the Readiness Engine?
Well, the best way to do something is go online and schedule a call on our website. We just could give you a demo. We could talk through and just hear more about your context and what might be a good fit for you. So usually those initial calls are with me, and you can schedule them either using our contact form, or there's also my Calendly link is on the website. It's readinessengine.io.
Beautiful. See, it's like even the interaction with these technologies starts with scheduling the dang call.
Just schedule the call. It does.
Exactly. So if you're listening right now and this is something that your organization would benefit from, that your team could benefit from, if you want to be able to be the microcosm in your organization and present a use case upline or something like that, act on it. Like, stop listening and click the link in the bio, or not the bio, the show notes, and go schedule a consultation. Right? It's as easy as that. Have a conversation, see where it takes you. Well, Logan, thank you so much for everything that we covered today. I mean, we could have gone down many different rabbit holes.
Absolutely.
And,
we did.
I think we're gonna continue this conversation on the development side of things as well. I think we can go a little bit deeper there. But for now, I thank you so much for all of the insights that you shared, the concepts that you're making available to organizations today. Like, this kind of augmented human decision making is something that is very much needed in our economy today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Of course. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to The Present Professional once again. Wherever you listen to this episode, go ahead and leave us a review, leave us some comments, rate and review us. It really makes a difference for the show and showing other people what they can experience listening to The Present Professional, the different people that they can connect with. So if you just take that little time for us, I would be greatly, greatly appreciative. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time.